Hello everyone, it's Silver. This is Helldivers 2. Yeah, I decided to finally take a look at it. I have been playing it sort of in the background of doing some other videos since it came out, and I've had a really good time with it so far, but I've actually been playing it entirely solo just to see what that experience was like. So something that I should probably mention from the very beginning is that all of my opinions are going to be of someone who plays the game alone, even though it is a co-op game. But honestly, I feel that the balancing of the game is so good that it still works just fine even with one player. So the idea is a pretty simple one. You are a Helldiver, a sort of elite force, because you actually play as multiple people, of very expendable soldiers who go down to various planets to try and spread liberty, which basically means die a whole bunch and destroy half of it. Because this is, of course, a very sort of pastiche parody kind of universe, and in the same way that something like Earth Defense Force is a parody of stuff like B-movies and kaiju films and things like that, this game is very much a pastiche of Starship Troopers and similar sort of ultra-patriotic parodies of American colonialism, effectively. So you have a destroyer in space, which is yours, which is very nice of them to give you, and you sort of float above random planets and then complete various missions. You will choose an operation that has a number of different missions attached to it, depending on the difficulty you're playing. In the earlier few difficulties, there's only one mission per op, but as you raise higher and higher, you'll have to complete multiple different missions per operation to actually complete everything. And each planet will have really just a large host of different generated missions for you to take part in, and there are a lot of different mission types. So you'll find everything from just you have 12 minutes to go down here and destroy as many fabrication facilities as possible to sort of stem the tide of the enemy creating more of themselves, to something much more involved, like find these bases and destroy the important strategic assets in them and things like that. But the missions are not a linear experience. Even though you do have a goal when you touch down, you have a specific thing that you are intended to do, there will also be a bunch of other stuff for you to do as you're walking around. Each planet has its own sort of atmosphere in a literal sense, like what the surface is like, and some of them have different weather effects or different hazards, like tornadoes made of fire, which is just lovely, or just like really heavy caustic fog or some things like that. So you got to be careful about whatever natural stuff is on the planet to thwart you, and then once you're there, you will have to navigate its landscape. And everything comes from orbit in this game, including you. Whenever you actually spawn on the planet, you drop down from your destroyer in orbit in a drop pod that you can steer a little bit before it hits the surface, so you have a little bit of time to sort of steer it towards a general direction, usually away from whatever is about to kill you. And each mission is timed. I mentioned earlier that there are some missions that have a 12-minute time limit, which is obviously not very long. Those are blitz missions, so those are supposed to be really fast and frantic. Your normal mission time limit for most is 40 minutes. However, that's not a hard time limit, by which I mean you don't lose as soon as the 40 minutes passes. Instead, the destroyer passes out of low orbit, and you can no longer use any of your supports or get any reinforcements or anything, but you still have time to complete the mission. It's just that as soon as your time runs out, an extraction shuttle will be called, and you have about 2 minutes before it arrives, and then it'll only stay on the landing pad for like 30 seconds or so, or something like that, and then it'll leave, so you don't have very much longer to complete the mission, but you still can. You have a couple of different loadouts to manage, which are very important. You have your basic character loadout, which will be a primary weapon, a secondary, a grenade, as well as the armor that you're wearing, as well as a cape, which doesn't do anything but looks very stylish. And there's quite a large variety of different weapons for you to choose from. You'll only start with just a basic loadout, but as you go through the game, you'll be able to unlock more and more through the war bond system, which I'll explain in a little while. And the armors in this game all have a certain armor value that they give you, which is just like base damage reduction, effectively. They also have a different movement speed that they give you, with, of course, lighter armor is providing less protection, but allowing you to move faster. And also, I think they affect your stamina regeneration, too, because you can use stamina to sprint. Every armor set also has a perk that is related to whatever it does. Maybe it makes you throw farther and be able to hold more grenades, or it makes you hold extra stims to heal yourself and also makes the healing last longer, all sorts of things like that. And in addition to all the stuff you're bringing down to the surface, you also have your stratagems, and you'll be able to select 4 of these at the beginning of every mission, so you can change it up as often as you want. And these are your call-ins, your big orbital things that allow you to do all sorts of stuff, a lot of which are highly destructive. The way they've implemented these is a lot of fun because it's sort of like a fighting game. You hold the stratagem button and it shows you your list of stratagems, and each one will have a different selection of movement directions that you have to press in order to get them to go off. Like your basic resupply stratagem that you always have is down, down, up, right. And then you get a beacon and you throw that beacon down, and it will, after about 10 seconds or so, call down a pod with some resupplies in it. there are a large different number of stratagems that you can bring with you, and of course you're going to want to tailor them to the type of mission that you're on. If you're on a mission that's going to involve destroying large bases, then you're probably going to want some big bombs and artillery strikes and stuff to actually facilitate that happening. But if you're on something that's a little bit, say, stealthier, or something that involves more like single target fire and stuff, then you might want some smaller scale airstrikes, or maybe a couple of weapons that you can call in, like grenade launchers and cannons and stuff. And there are all sorts of other things besides that, like little drones that follow you around and have assault rifles or lasers to use against your enemies, or maybe some like red alert style Tesla towers that you can call down to shock a bunch of enemies around you, chain lightning through whole crowds, or perhaps various kinds of sentries, like the mortar sentry, which is really good for single player play because you don't have to worry about actually blowing up your friends with it that way. There's also a missile sentry and a minigun sentry and a couple others. So basically, before each mission, you're tailoring your loadout to benefit whatever it is you're expected to be doing. But like I said, once you land, you'll find other stuff to do. Every mission will have the main objective, but it'll also have these blue marked optional secondary objectives that give you a bunch of extra money and experience to complete. Usually only one of these is marked when you first start, but there are often two more that are sort of hidden, and you'll find them by exploring, or indeed if you find a radar station to use and do that little mini game, then you will sort of scan the map and see where all of them are at once. So you'll find that the maps are actually a pretty good size in this game, and they have quite a lot of stuff. You'll find other unmarked stuff as well to come across, like these glowing pods that will have various rewards in them, various types of currencies, maybe even some weapons and stuff like that that you can use for that mission. And then, of course, there are various sizes of enemy base, and the enemy bases are really difficult to assault in some cases, depending on your difficulty, but they are very rewarding. They give you a lot of experience and stuff, and also a lot of kills and things, depending on what you need to be doing for your own orders and all that good stuff. So yeah, you'll find that there's a pretty tremendous amount of stuff to find and do in each mission, and that 40-minute time limit is actually a lot less than it sounds like to get everything done, because you have a pretty good sized map full of hazards and enemies to do all this in, so each deployment does feel like its own little contained adventure. When it comes to the combat, this game nails it down better than a lot of games in this genre. They've made the guns really, really satisfying to use. Enemies tend to come apart in satisfying chunks. The automatons will actually fall apart. You can blow arms and legs off of them. You can destroy their heads. You can just sort of make them combust internally because of all the shots you put into them. And of course, the bigger bots have more parts to blow up. And the bugs have a similar sort of take them apart feeling, where you can tear off armored sections and destroy limbs and all sorts of stuff like that to slow them down or make them not able to attack you very easily, or indeed just tear them into pieces with shotgun blasts and stuff, because a lot of enemies do come apart that way. And I gotta say, this game has some of the best video game shotguns that I've seen in a really long time. The shotguns in this game are viable, really good weapons that are super powerful feeling and have really respectable range, a lot longer than you would normally expect for a video game shotgun to have, and they're just really fun to use. And of course, then there's the sound design. All of the sound effects for your weapons, for the enemy's weapons, for the impact sounds from enemies taking hits and things, it's all really satisfying. The explosions are very bassy and boomy, and all of the artillery strikes and things have a really sort of oppressive feel, like when you're sort of hunkered down and a little bit too close and you see all of these explosions going off too close to you. It's got a really good atmosphere to it. It feels like you're part of a war. And one of the things that they've done that I really like that you usually don't see in games is they've made it to where the explosions will send visible shockwaves across the ground that you can actually see. You know, like in real life, when an explosion goes off, you can see the shockwave propagate, expand out from it, and kick up dust in a big circle on the ground. That actually happens in this game, and it makes the explosions even more satisfying. There are a lot of enemy types to face, and this is tied directly to the difficulty system. You will start with just the basic level 1 difficulty, but as you complete missions on a difficulty, you will unlock the next one up. And you can keep doing this all through all 9 difficulties. Yes, there are 9. And higher difficulties add things like more advanced, heavily armored enemies that are larger and have more different ways you need to take them down. They'll also expand the enemy base networks with more larger bases that have fancier stuff in them, like things that can jam your stratagems, or things that can detect you from a really long distance and show all the enemies on the map where you are. That sucks. And also, in addition to the new enemy types, the higher difficulties add extra things like new objectives and secondary objective types that weren't there before, like the aforementioned jamming towers and stuff that have to be dealt with in their own specific ways. Or maybe the new dropship fabrication towers, those are a problem. Or gunship, rather, yeah, they're big gunships that come your way and can be pretty difficult to take down if you're not prepared for them, but even as a solo player, they are still possible to destroy. You just gotta be aware that they're on the way. Higher difficulties also add more missions per operation, so just doing one and completing the operation is how the first couple work, but once you get to like hard and extreme, you'll be doing like 3 or 4 per mission in order to actually be done with a full operation. So far, I found that extreme is kind of my limit as a solo player. I haven't been able to complete anything above extreme yet. I think I can. I think I can do it. I just got to get a little bit better at the game first, but extreme is really hard. Higher difficulties will also add some other unpleasant stuff, like the ability for enemies to use stratagems against you, so they can actually call in like mortar fire and stuff on your position, which is very rude. And it also will give you these modifiers, these operation modifiers, that will make a mission harder in some way, like make your stratagems have a 25% longer cooldown, or make sure you only have 3 stratagem slots instead of all 4, stuff like that, that just sort of adds some complications into the mission. So about all the various unlocks and currencies and stuff. You've got a currency called requisition slips. This is sort of like your gold, like your main currency that you use to spend on things. When you go back to your ship, you can manage it, and one of the things you can do is unlock new stratagems via requisition slips. And these are limited by level. You have an account level that goes up, and the more objectives you complete, the more experience you get, and the faster you'll level up. And different stratagems require a different minimum level to get. Like, for instance, if you want to unlock the Quasar shoulder-mounted energy cannon, that is a level 18 stratagem. So once you hit that level, you'll be able to spend requisition slips to unlock it, and then at that point you can bring it onto any battle that you want. There are also modules for your ship. These are like permanent upgrades to various things. These take resources. There are 3 different rarities of resources, and the higher rarity ones only start to appear at certain difficulty levels. And you have to successfully extract to bring these back. You don't just collect them and you get them. You have to actually collect them, hold on to them, and then bring them back alive in order to have them added to your stock of resources. But then you can spend these on various different upgrades that usually affect your stratagems and stuff in various ways to make them more powerful or easier to use or have quicker cooldowns or things like that. There are all sorts of them. There's like 4 for each section of the ship, and they get very expensive, so you will be acquiring these for quite a while. The other main currency are medals, and you get medals for completing missions. Depending on the difficulty, you get more and more medals for each one, and the higher difficulties will also give you a stacking increase to the medals that you get as long as you keep succeeding at missions over and over until you complete the entire operation, in which case you'll get the maximum amount, so you can get a lot of medals that way. You'll also get medals as the main reward from orders. Every day you'll have a personal order, which is like some sort of challenge for you to complete, like kill 400 automatons or kill 60 enemies with this specific calling weapon or something like that. They're just like little challenges for you to complete, and if you do them, you get usually around 15 medals or so. And then there are the major orders, and these are for the entire community who's playing all at once. And if it succeeds, they'll have a time limit, and if it succeeds within the time limit, then everyone playing the game will get the number of medals, and it's usually a bunch, like 50 or 55 or so. So it's a good way to get large bursts of medals, and this is sort of what everyone is working towards, because you can play on just about any planet at any time that's currently unlocked, something that's currently being threatened, but there will be a specific major order that says, in this sector there are these 3 planets that we need you to hold until this long, or something like that, and then that will give you a sort of an overarching goal to work towards. It is very much a community effort, and it feels like it, because even if you're playing solo, you'll constantly see other destroyers in orbit around planets, and you'll see them using their stratagems, like calling down orbital lasers and bombs and stuff. You can actually see it all happening in the distance, which is a super cool little touch. Honestly, I think that this game, far more than most others in this genre, makes you feel like you're part of a large-scale conflict. And the medals are your main currency for unlocking new weapons and stuff. So you have war bonds. These are kind of like a banner of various items, and you can spend medals on a tier of this banner, and then once you spend a certain number of medals, you will unlock the next tier that has a whole bunch of new stuff, and you will keep doing this to go down level by level, going through the whole banner and unlocking whatever you want, from new armor sets to new capes to new cards for your player character to new weapons to bring on missions and all sorts of stuff like that, and even boosters, which, by the way, way, are not single use. I thought they were at first because they just sounded like the kind of thing that would be like a single use consumable, but they are not. Boosters are permanent once you have them. Everyone starts with one war bond available that has a whole bunch of levels to it and unlocks all of the sort of base weapons and armors in the game, so this is where you're going to be getting all that progression. But there are also premium war bonds, and these cost 1,000 super credits. And super credits are actually a premium currency, meaning you can buy them with real money. But I don't really mind this all that much because you can also earn them while playing, and it doesn't take that long. Every war bond will have several purchases you can make in it that give you a bunch of super credits just from spending medals on them, and you'll also be able to find super credits during missions. So you can save up the 1,000 over time in order to get one of these if you want, and these will of course have their own weapons and armors and stuff all themed around something specific. Like one of them is entirely energy weapon based, and the most recent one at the time of recording this is all explosive based. And the biggest thing that makes me not mind this system is the fact that it avoids FOMO entirely. There is no fear of missing out in these war bonds because they're permanent. You don't have to worry about, oh, this one is in the game for 2 weeks, I better hurry up and buy the credits or else I'll miss it. You don't do that. Once a bond is in the game, it's in the game for everyone for the same amount of time. They're not time limited. So the fact that you have as long as you want to save up for any of them you want without having to worry about them disappearing is what makes me okay with this system, because that's actually quite player friendly. So overall, Helldivers 2 is a triumphant example of this genre because it does what a lot of them have done before, but in a way that's so good and so satisfying that it never feels repetitive. This is kind of like, like your Left 4 Deads or your Vermintides, games that people play for hundreds or even thousands of hours, and they don't feel that they're repetitive experiences because the base gameplay loop is so good and so satisfying that they can play for that long and still have a good time. So I think that the game really succeeds in a way that a lot of other games in the genre, this sort of drop down and be an incremental piece in an overall community effort kind of concept, it just does it so uncommonly well with such good shooting and such fun artillery and airstrikes and stuff. It's all just really well implemented, and it means that the game is always a blast to play. There are problems that I have with it, of course. There are some balance issues, like the fact that the bugs seem oddly more difficult than the bots to face solo, simply because they never stop spawning. And there are also the occasional bugs to face, not those kinds, I mean like glitches, like the kind where you spawn inside of a staircase and get stuck and have to get killed by a bot to get unstuck and things like that. That does occasionally happen. So the game feels quite polished, but there are still some aspects of its polish, of its presentation, that could use a little bit more work because there are still some bugs to be squashed. But honestly, for $40 for this game, that's a steal. That's a really good price. That almost feels like a sale price for a game with this much content. And the fact that they're constantly adding more content, like they've added entirely new enemy types, new objective types, new map types, new war bonds with new weapons and armor. There's a lot to be added to this game, and the fact that they are doing all of this, of course, for free. This is not DLC. This is stuff that you get and can optionally pay for, but can also earn. And of course, everyone gets all the new mission and enemy types for free and stuff. So yeah, this is an easy recommend. It's a really, really good game, and if you're at all a fan of this genre, whether you want to do it co-op or solo, this is an awesome time, and I've had an absolute blast with it so far, and will continue to do so. This will be one of those things I keep installed on my machine and my Steam Deck to just play whenever I feel like it, when I'm not doing something else more important. So thank you guys very much for watching. I will put the link in the description below this video to the Steam store page for Helldivers 2 if you wish to check it out yourselves, and I'll see you next time.